Hello Year 12s and welcome to this video on waste minimisation strategies. This video is part of a series of 4 videos on the use of different kinds of strategies to optimise a business's operations. There are 4 things that you need to do while you're watching this video. The first thing is to take the very best Cornell notes that you can. The second thing is to use the pause and rewind functions. Use the pause function if you need to stop this video to take notes. Use the rewind function if you need to go back over any information contained in this video. The third thing that you need to do is have your vocabulary sheets open in front of you so that you can write into your vocabulary sheets the definitions of key terms or of any other words that you may be unfamiliar with. And the fourth thing that you need to do is have your summary books open in front of you. As we go through this video, I will give you some guidance as to what you should include in your summary books. Once you've finished listening to this video, please read the pages from the textbook referred to on this slide. And if you find any additional information from that reading that you think is useful, then supplement your Cornell notes with that information. You'll recall that operations management is the management of resources and functions within a business, that is, the management of the operations system, to transform inputs into goods and services, that is, outputs, in a way that minimises the costs of production and maximises the quality of those outputs. Accordingly, the aim of operations management is to transform inputs into goods and services, or outputs, in a way that minimises the costs of production and maximises the quality of those outputs. Put another way, the aim of operations management is to make the best use of the operations system of a business. That is, to optimise the operations of the business. By minimising the costs of production and maximising the quality of outputs, good operations management improves the efficiency and the effectiveness of operations and therefore maximises the business's competitiveness. I've explained these concepts in a previous video. You should also recall that there are 4 types of operations management strategies that can be used to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of a business and therefore maximise the competitiveness of that business. These are technology strategies, materials management strategies, quality management strategies, and waste minimisation strategies. In this video, we will be looking at waste minimisation strategies. On this slide, I have set out the 2 learning intentions for this video. The first learning intention requires you to be able to describe and evaluate strategies to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of operations through waste minimisation in the production process, including the principles of lean management. The second learning intention requires you to be able to propose and justify waste minimisation strategies as ways of improving the efficiency and effectiveness of operations. By watching and taking notes on this video, you will be given the information that you need to achieve these 2 learning intentions. In addition, in class, you will be doing a number of learning activities that require you to apply this information so that you're able to achieve these learning intentions. Waste minimisation involves reducing the amount of inputs, work in progress, and outputs that are wasted in the production process of a business. Technology, materials management, and quality management strategies can all reduce waste, but in this video we are focusing on strategies that are specific to waste minimisation. A threshold question is, why is waste minimisation important for businesses? Well, there are at least 5 reasons for this. First, waste costs businesses money. It costs businesses money to buy inputs, and if those inputs are spoiled and have to be thrown out, or if those inputs are used to produce output that is defective and that output has to be thrown out, then the business is wasting money. It also costs businesses money to treat and dispose of waste and to store and transport waste. A second reason why waste minimisation is important for businesses is that it may be possible for a business to save money by reusing waste or recovering materials from waste. To the extent that a business can reuse waste or recover materials from waste, the business can use that waste or those recovered materials instead of paying for inputs. Third, it may be possible for a business to earn revenue by selling products that are made from waste, that is, by selling recycled products. Fourth, there may be laws that restrict the disposal of waste. If a business breaches those laws, then it might be fined. In addition, it will often cost the business money to comply with those laws. Fifth and finally, waste minimisation contributes to the protection of the environment, and customers, who after all are important stakeholders in a business, might only be prepared to buy products sold by the business where those products are produced using sustainable processes. As we've discussed previously, social objectives, such as the use of sustainable processes to protect the environment, can be consistent with financial business objectives, such as increasing the profit of a business. For example, Woolworths loses around 15,000 supermarket trolleys per year because people take the trolleys and don't return them. It costs Woolworths more than $150 to replace a broken or lost trolley. But in addition, dumped shopping trolleys also damage the environment because they end up in places such as creeks. Woolworths has therefore developed a trolley tracker app that enables people to notify Woolworths of the location of dumped trolleys. The incentive they have to report these trolleys is that they are then entered into a draw to win a $1,000 monthly reward. This is an example of how protecting the environment by recovering lost shopping trolleys is consistent with increasing profits by reducing the costs of replacing broken or lost trolleys. The 4 R's are a useful method for remembering some of the ways in which a business can minimise waste. The first way in which a business can minimise waste is through reducing the use of inputs. For example, a business might use less plastic packaging for its products, which means that there will be less waste of plastic packaging when customers discard that packaging as they unwrap the business's products. We've seen a recent example of a business that reduces the use of inputs. This is the example of the paint robots at the Toyota motor manufacturing plant in Kentucky, United States of America. Those robots painted along the contours of the cars and also used a cartridge and water-based system so as to reduce the amount of paint that was wasted. The second way in which businesses can minimise waste is through recycling that waste into usable products. For example, discarded glass jars can be melted and remoulded. Again, we saw an example of recycling at the Toyota motor manufacturing plant in Kentucky. You might recall that metal trimmed from the parts during stamping was collected on a conveyor belt and recycled for use in making other products. The third way in which businesses can minimise waste is through reusing the waste. For instance, we might have a paper manufacturing business, and as part of the paper manufacture, some of that paper is offcut. Well, those paper offcuts can then be fed back into the paper production process to make more paper. And another way in which businesses can minimise waste is by recovering materials from waste. For example, when a gold mining company digs gold out of the ground, it digs up a whole lot of overburden, that is soil and rock, and it simply discards those as slag. However, some of that overburden is likely to contain gold, and so if the gold mining company goes back and reprocesses that slag, then it's able to recover from that slag additional gold. Well, this brings us to the concept of lean management, which is the focus of the first of our learning intentions. Lean management is a system used to continuously identify and reduce waste in an operations system so as to increase productivity. Look down the left-hand side of your vocabulary sheets, find the term lean management and write this definition in there. Once you've done that, please highlight the words in red, bold, italicized type. And if you're ever required to define or describe lean management, make sure that you include the highlighted words in your definition or description. There are two important things to notice about this definition of lean management. The first is that lean management is a system. It's not just an isolated or once-off act that a business might take to reduce waste. Instead, lean management refers to a process that a business has in place to continuously identify and reduce waste. The second important thing to note about this definition is that waste is broadly defined. In addition to the more obvious waste of physical inputs, work in progress, and outputs, lean management is also concerned with identifying and reducing the waste of time, which is a valuable input. The system of lean management consists of 6 steps. The first step is to identify customer needs. This is necessary so as to ensure that the business is producing output that its customers want. If a business is producing output that customers don't want, then that output will be wasted. Now remember that customers include not just the external customers of the business, but also internal customers. A particular group of employees within the business, that is, a particular work group, is likely to have an internal customer, which will be the work group that is next along the line in the production process. In such a case, the first work group needs to identify the requirements of the second work group as its customer. The second step in lean management is process mapping, which involves identifying each of the steps that are taken in the operations system. It's necessary to identify each of these steps so as to be able to specifically focus on what opportunities there are for reducing waste at each of these steps. The third step in lean management is empowerment. This means that the business must give its employees responsibility for developing strategies to minimize waste. The fourth step is continuous improvement. This means that all employees at every level of the business must continuously seek to improve the business's production process by identifying ways of minimizing waste. Both the third and fourth steps relate to the corporate culture of the business. A business will only be successful in implementing lean management if it has a corporate culture in which its employees are committed to continuously improving the business's production process by identifying and minimizing waste, and in which the business's employees are willing to accept responsibility for improving the business's production process by identifying and minimizing waste. The fifth step is implementation. Typically, management sign-off will be required before the strategies suggested by employees to reduce waste can be implemented. The sixth stage may require the business to partner with suppliers. That is, the business might need the cooperation of its suppliers to implement its waste minimization strategies. For example, if the business wants to reduce the amount of plastic that it discards, then it might need the agreement of its suppliers to reduce the amount of plastic packaging they use to wrap up their inputs in. Now, as I've said, this process is an ongoing process, so this cycle will continue to repeat itself. So far, we've looked at what lean management is. In the remainder of this video, we're going to look at 2 specific waste minimization strategies which incorporate the principles of lean management. These are Kaizen and TIMWOOD. Kaizen is an approach which requires employees at all levels of the business to work together to continuously improve the production process, including by eliminating waste. Look down the left-hand side of your vocabulary sheets, find the term Kaizen and write this definition in there. Once you've done that, highlight the words in red, bold, italicized type, and if you're ever required to define or describe Kaizen, then please include the highlighted words in your definition or description. In fact, Kaizen covers improvements in a number of areas, including quality, cost, delivery, management, safety, and waste. However, for our purposes, we'll just be focusing on the approach of Kaizen to eliminating waste. Kaizen aims to eliminate waste in all of the activities of a business. This includes reducing the waste of materials and time. The focus of Kaizen is on achieving small improvements as a result of coordinated, continuous efforts by all employees. To do this, groups of employees who are responsible for a particular activity cooperate in identifying waste in that activity and in developing the best way to reduce that waste so that the activity can be carried out more efficiently, that is, with less waste of materials and time. The employees who make up these groups can come from different parts of the business. Please include this summary in your summary book together with at least one of the following examples of Kaizen. Our first example of Kaizen concerns a car manufacturer which measured the turning circle of the four-wheel drive cars that it produced by having one employee spray water onto the tyre of the car while another employee drove the car around its turning circle. The car's turning circle was then calculated by measuring the water track of the tyre on the ground. This quality control test took 20 minutes and 2 employees for each car. Following the application of Kaizen to this activity, it was decided to change the way that this test was conducted. Under this new approach, the driver attached a hose to the car's water tank, and the hose sprayed water on the car's tyres while the driver drove the car around its turning circle. This reduced both the time and labour required to perform the test. The test now took 5 minutes instead of 20 minutes per car, and only 1 employee rather than 2 employees was needed to conduct the test. Our second example of Kaizen comes from the video that you watched about the Toyota motor manufacturing plant in Kentucky in the United States of America. It used to be that the doors were kept on the cars during the assembly process. However, following the application of Kaizen to this activity, it was decided to remove the car doors so that the workers could more easily access the car bodies to install components, and so that the racks that contained the parts to be installed could be moved closer to the assembly line. This change reduced the time that was wasted by workers in walking around the doors, in closing and opening the doors, and in moving parts from the component racks to the assembly line. It also reduced the risk of workers injuring themselves on the doors and the risk of damage to the doors themselves. This brings us to the second specific waste minimisation strategy that we need to look at, which is TIMWOOD. TIMWOOD is an approach to waste minimisation that identifies 7 key areas of waste in a business for the purpose of focusing attention on where and how to reduce waste. These areas of waste are transport, inventory, motion, weighting, overproduction, overprocessing, and defects. Look down the left-hand side of your vocabulary sheets, find the term TIMWOOD and write this definition in there. You'll see that I have left some space for you to describe each of these 7 areas of waste, and you'll be able to fill in these descriptions when I describe them for you in a moment. Now, turn to your summary books and include this table in your summary books. You can use this table to summarise the description of TIMWOOD that I will give you over the next 8 slides. As I've said, TIMWOOD is an approach to waste minimisation that identifies 7 key areas of waste in a business for the purpose of focusing attention on where and how to reduce waste. In this slide, I will describe for you each of the 7 areas of waste. You need to include these definitions in both your vocabulary sheets and in the second column of the table in your summary books. For the moment, I will simply describe each of these areas of waste, and then we'll look at them in more detail in the slides that follow. The 7 areas of waste are as follows. First, transport. The waste of transport refers to the unnecessary movement of products between processes. Second, inventory. The waste of inventory refers to inventory, that is inputs, work in progress and outputs, taking up space. Third, motion. The waste of motion refers to unnecessary movement within a process. Fourth, waiting. Waiting refers to any idle time between two processes, where the second process can't start until the first process has finished. Fifth, overproduction. Overproduction refers to producing something before it is needed or producing too much of a product. Sixth, overprocessing. Overprocessing refers to putting more time and effort into a product than a customer requests. And seventh and finally, defects. Defects refers to deficiencies in the quality of a product. Now, in a SAC or an exam, if you're asked to answer a question relating to waste minimisation strategies and the question is worth, say, only 3 marks, then you won't have the time, and it's not necessary, to describe each of these areas of waste. Instead, you'll need to think strategically about which are the most relevant areas of waste for the purposes of answering the question. The first area of waste identified by TIMWOOD is the waste of transport. You can complete the last 3 columns of the table in your summary books by summarising the information that I'll put on this slide about the waste of transport. First, what is wasted? Transport, that is the movement of products between processes, wastes time and effort and can end up damaging the products themselves. Second, what causes transport waste? Transport waste is typically caused by inefficient building layout. For example, it may be that all of the packaging is produced in one area, with the result that that packaging then has to be transported to all of the different areas where the different finished products are stored ready for packaging. That wastes time and effort. Third, how can transport waste be reduced? Well, transport waste can be reduced in 2 ways. Firstly, by placing processes as close together as possible, with the material moving directly from process to process without significant delays. And second, through having multiple storage locations. In our example of the packaging, it would be possible to reduce transport waste by producing packaging in different areas that are much closer to the areas where the different finished products are stored ready for packaging. The second area of waste identified by TIMWOOD is the waste of inventory. You can complete the last 3 columns of the table in your summary books by summarising in those columns the information that I'll put on this slide about the waste of inventory. First, what is wasted? Well, the storage of excess inventory wastes space. Second, what causes inventory waste? Inventory waste is typically caused by the overproduction of products, that is, the production of a greater quantity of products than customers require in the short term. Inventory waste is also caused by spoiling, for instance, as where inputs or outputs are unperishable and they deteriorate before they can be used or sold. An example is the case of a cake factory. If the cake factory produces more cakes than customers want to buy in, say, a week, then some of those cakes are going to go stale and they will have to be thrown out. That is, they will be wasted. And third, how can inventory waste be reduced? Inventory waste can be reduced in one of 3 ways. First, by better matching production to customer requirements. Second, by producing smaller quantities of products more frequently. And third, by using older inputs before more recent inputs and by selling older outputs before more recent outputs. Now, the purpose of materials management strategies is generally to do all of these things. However, you must not use material management strategies, including just-in-time, as examples of waste minimisation strategies. The third area of waste identified by TIMWOOD is the waste of motion. You can complete the last 3 columns of the table in your summary books by summarising in those columns the information that I'll put on this slide about the waste of motion. First, what is wasted? Well, motion, that is the movement of products within a process, wastes time. For example, as where an employee has to travel some distance to perform a function. Second, what causes waste of motion? Motion waste is typically caused by inefficient workplace layouts. For example, it is a waste of time for a bricklayer to have to constantly bend to pick up heavy bricks from the ground. This waste of motion could instead be avoided if the bricks were available at a more comfortable height. And third, how can motion waste be reduced? Motion waste can be reduced in one of two ways. First, by improving workplace layouts to avoid excessive walking, bending or reaching, and second, by redesigning the workplace layout to allow for less movement of materials. In the video that you watched about the Toyota motor manufacturing facility in Kentucky in the United States, we saw one way of reducing motion waste. This was the removal of the doors from the cars during the assembly process. This reduced motion waste caused by workers having to walk around those doors and to open and close those doors while they were installing components. It also reduced motion waste because it meant that the racks that held the components that needed to be installed could be brought closer to the assembly line, which minimised the time that it took for the workers to get the components from the racks and install them in the cars. Other examples of ways of reducing motion waste include the self-service checkouts at supermarkets and the kiosks at McDonald's, where customers can put in their own orders for McDonald's food. In both of these cases, motion waste is reduced because less time is wasted by customers having to queue up in order to be served. The fourth area of waste identified by TIMWOOD is waiting. You can complete the last three columns of the table in your summary books by summarising in those columns the information that I'll put on this slide about waiting. First, what is wasted? Well, where one process has to be finished before another process can start, the time before the second process can start is wasted. Second, what causes waiting? There are a number of possible causes of waiting. It may be that the first process runs over its expected time. Alternatively, there might have been a machine breakdown in the first process. Or there may be a need to fix up a defective product produced by the first process before that product can be used as an input in the second process. For instance, as where there's a defect in the dough that causes a delay in making a pizza while the dough is remixed. Third, how can waiting be reduced? Waiting can generally be reduced by more efficiently sequencing processes. In the video that you watched on the Toyota motor manufacturing plant in Kentucky in the United States, we saw an example of reducing waiting. That plant was able to reduce the time taken to change the dies required to stamp different components from a number of hours to just 10 minutes. This reduced the downtime in changing over from one kind of die required to produce one kind of component to another kind of die required to produce another kind of component. The fifth area of waste identified by TIMWOOD is overproduction. You can complete the last three columns of the table in your summary books by summarising in those columns the information that I'll put on this slide about overproduction. First, what is wasted? Well, overproduction wastes money and space. Overproduction wastes money because storing product costs money. For example, the business might have to pay rent on a warehouse that it uses to store its products. Overproduction also wastes space because storing product takes up space. Second, what causes overproduction? Overproduction is typically caused by the poor forecasting of demand for the business's products. And third, how can overproduction be reduced? Overproduction can be reduced in one of two ways. First, by better matching production to customer requirements, and second, by producing smaller quantities of products more frequently. Now, the purpose of many of the materials management strategies is to do both of these things. However, as I said in the context of the waste of inventory, you must not use material management strategies such as just-in-time as examples of waste minimisation strategies. The sixth area of waste identified by TIMWOOD is over-processing. You can complete the last 3 columns of the table in your summary books by summarising in those columns the information that I will put on this slide about over-processing. First, what is wasted? Well, over-processing wastes both time and effort because it means that more time and effort is being put into a product than is required by a customer. For example, if the business is a painting business, then it is a waste of time and effort to paint areas that won't be seen. That is, unless the customer requires those areas to be painted. Second, what causes over-processing? Over-processing is typically caused by not properly determining the customer's requirements in the first place. And third, how can over-processing be reduced? Over-processing can be reduced by setting clear specifications and quality standards with the customer up front. The seventh and final area of waste identified by TIMWOOD is defects. You can complete the last 3 columns of the table in your summary books by summarising in those columns the information that I'll put on this slide about defects. First, what is wasted? Well, defects waste the time, effort and other inputs that are used in producing a product that has to be discarded because it is defective. Defects also waste the time, effort and other inputs that are used in fixing up the defective product where it's not going to be discarded but where it is being reworked. Second, what causes defects? Defects are typically caused by poor work processes. And third, how can defects be reduced? Defects can be reduced in one of 3 ways. First, by implementing training to improve workers' skills so that the workers don't make errors or mistakes in the first place. Second, by introducing quality assurance processes, that is, improved processes, to prevent defects occurring in the first place. And third, by buying inputs from reliable suppliers. We saw a number of examples of ways in which defects are reduced on the video about the Toyota motor manufacturing plant in Kentucky in the United States. Importantly, the overarching corporate culture at that plant was that all workers are considered to be quality inspectors who treat the next step in the process as their customers. As a result, there were a number of stages at which the cars that were being assembled were tested for defects. For example, they were tested for noise and vibrations, for leaks, and their paint finish was checked for flaws. So far, as required by our first learning intention, we have described 3 strategies that can be used to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of operations. That is, lean management and the 2 specific strategies of Kaizen and TIMWOOD that incorporate the principles of lean management. However, our first learning intention also requires you to be able to evaluate these strategies. This means that you must be able to explain and weigh up both the advantages and the disadvantages of the cost of these strategies. Remember that an evaluation is more than a description. In an evaluation, you must weigh up the advantages of each of these strategies against their related disadvantages, using words of difference such as however, on the other hand, in contrast, whereas and while. In this table, I've identified the advantages and disadvantages of lean management. Please include this table in your summary books, together with notes from the discussion which follows, where this helps you to better understand this table. A significant advantage of lean management is that, as I've just described in the context of TIMWOOD, it reduces the waste of inputs. Reducing the waste of transport, the waste of motion, waiting and over-processing reduces the waste of time, which is a valuable input. Reducing the waste of inventory and overproduction reduces the waste of space, which is another valuable input. And reducing the waste of inventory and defects reduces the waste of inputs such as time, labour, raw materials and component parts. However, the ability of a business to reduce its waste of inventory might depend on the willingness of its input suppliers to cooperate. For example, by delivering smaller quantities of inputs more frequently and at shorter notice from the business. Another advantage of lean management is that by reducing waste, it reduces the costs of the business in the form of wasted inputs. That is, inputs the business has paid for, but which are then wasted because either the inputs are spoiled and have to be discarded, or because the outputs that the inputs are used to make are defective and have to be discarded. By reducing waste, lean management also reduces the costs paid by the business for treating and disposing of that waste, and for transporting and storing that waste. In addition, a business may be able to save money by reusing waste or recovering materials from the waste. This is because the business could use this waste and recovered materials instead of buying inputs. On the other hand, lean management may be costly to implement. For example, it may be necessary to change the building layout to reduce the waste of transport, or to introduce quality assurance to reduce defects. And as we know, quality assurance requires the business to spend money on changing its work processes, having its work processes audited, and paying for certification from an external certification body. There are three further advantages of lean management. First, by reducing defects, it increases the quality of the business's outputs, which increases customer satisfaction with those outputs. Second, the business may be able to earn revenue by selling products it makes from its waste, that is, by selling recycled products. And third, by reducing its waste, the business is contributing to the protection of the environment. Having said this, a major issue is that for a business to successfully implement lean management, then all employees must be committed to identifying and reducing waste. Not only does it cost money for the business to equip employees with the skills necessary for them to do this, for example, skills such as problem solving, but the business needs to develop a corporate culture where all employees are committed to and accept responsibility for identifying and reducing waste. Our second learning intention requires you to be able to propose and justify waste minimisation strategies as ways of improving the efficiency and effectiveness of operations. To do this, you must be able to specifically relate the use of these strategies separately to efficiency and effectiveness. That is the purpose of this table. Please include this table in your summary books, together with notes from the discussion which follows, where this helps you to better understand the table. All I've done in this table is to take the relevant advantages of lean management from the previous slide and relate these advantages to both efficiency and effectiveness. By keeping the colour coding, I'm hoping that you can see that you only need to learn the information once to be able to answer both a question that requires you to evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of lean management, and a question that requires you to justify lean management or the more specific strategies of Kaizen and TIMWOOD as ways of improving the efficiency and effectiveness of operations. Well, how does lean management improve efficiency? Remember that when we're talking about the efficiency of an operations management strategy, we're focusing on how that strategy increases the value of output and reduces the cost of inputs. The first way in which lean management increases efficiency is by reducing the waste of inputs. This reduces the cost of inputs for the business. As I've explained in the context of TIMWOOD, by reducing the waste of transport, the waste of motion, waiting, and over-processing, lean management reduces the waste of time and therefore the cost of time for the business. By reducing the waste of inventory and overproduction, lean management reduces the waste of space and therefore the cost of space for the business. And by reducing the waste of inventory and defects, lean management reduces the waste of inputs such as time, labour, raw materials and component parts, and therefore reduces the cost of these inputs for the business. The second way in which lean management increases efficiency is by reducing defects. This increases the quality of the business's outputs and therefore increases the value of those outputs to customers, because customers will be more satisfied with the business's products. We can now look at how lean management improves effectiveness. Remember that effectiveness refers to the extent to which the relevant operations management strategy, in this case lean management, and the two more specific strategies of Kaizen and TIMWOOD, contribute to the achievement of the business objectives. In undertaking this analysis, we must first identify the business objectives that may be achieved through the use of lean management. I've chosen 4 business objectives for this purpose. These are the business objectives of increasing profit, of increasing sales, of increasing market share, and of protecting the environment, which is a social objective. Well, how does the use of lean management contribute to the achievement of the business objective of increasing profit? It does this by reducing input costs. Specifically, lean management reduces the waste of inputs such as time, space, and other inputs by reducing the waste of transport, the waste of motion, the waste of inventory, waiting, overproduction, overprocessing, and defects. By reducing the waste of a business, lean management also reduces the costs of the business in treating, disposing of, transporting, and storing that waste. In addition, the business might be able to save money by reusing waste or recovering materials from waste. This is because the business can use this waste and recovered materials in place of bought inputs. Lean management also contributes to the achievement of the business objective of increasing profit by increasing revenue. This is because by reducing defects, there is an increase in the quality of the business's output, and so that output can be sold at a higher price, which increases revenue and therefore increases profit. In addition, the business might be able to earn extra revenue by selling recycled products, that is, products that the business makes from its waste. How does the use of lean management contribute to the achievement of the business objectives of increasing sales and increasing market share? Well, it does this by reducing defects, which increases the quality of the business's output, which means that customers will want to buy more of the business's output. This increases the business's sales. In addition, if this increase in quality attracts customers from the business's competitors to the business, then this will increase the market share of the business. Finally, how does the use of lean management contribute to the achievement of the business objective of protecting the environment? It does this because by reducing the business's waste, lean management reduces the impact of the business on the environment. Well, that brings us to the end of this video. As a result of watching and taking notes on this video, you should now be able to do 2 things. The first thing is that you should be able to describe and evaluate strategies to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of operations through waste minimisation in the production process, including the principles of lean management. The second thing that you should be able to do is to propose and justify waste minimisation strategies as ways of improving the efficiency and effectiveness of operations. The purpose of this video was to give you the information that you need to be able to achieve these 2 learning intentions. In class, you'll be undertaking some learning activities which require you to apply this information, and that also will help you to achieve these 2 learning intentions. Remember to read the pages from the textbook referred to on the first slide in this video. And if you find any additional information from that reading that you think is useful, then please supplement your Cornell notes with that information. Thank you for your attention.